February 25th, 1942, 2 a.m. Air raid sirens sounded throughout Los Angeles and other cities on the west coast of the United States. At the same time, a citywide blackout and curfew were put into effect. In a flash, the noisy streets fell into silence, and the dark sky was filled with searchlights. Although they quickly managed to evacuate the citizens, the enemy's speed was beyond imagination, which became a problem. They emerged above the city just minutes after being spotted 200 kilometers offshore, leaving the whole city in a state of panic. I was on my way home from a night shift. As soon as the air raid sirens went off, I stopped my car and turned off the headlights. Because during a war, having lights turned on would make me an easy target for enemies. I got out of the car and was about to walk somewhere else, but then I saw those things. There was a group of extremely large, shiny, circular, luminescent objects floating in the sky. They were surrounding the city with a certain gap in between each of them, as if they were in line. The U.S. Army determined that the unidentified aircraft was an air raid carried out by the Imperial Japanese Army Air Service, not only because of the world being at the peak of World War II at the time, but also because of the attack on Pearl Harbor 2 months prior, in which 350 Imperial Japanese aircrafts bombed the U.S. naval base. Around 2,400 people were killed and 1,200 were injured as a result of the surprise attack. At the time, they were in fear of another Japanese attack on the U.S. continent. Unidentified aircraft entered within 5-kilometer radius of the city. Around 15 were spotted, but there may be more. Movement speed is extremely fast. Continuous flashing on the radar. They are currently within range. Request permission to fire anti-aircraft guns. I say again, enemy planes are above the city. Request permission to fire anti-aircraft guns over. It was a situation in which the entirety of the U.S. military forces were looking to the sky. However, the shape of the aircraft did not look like it belonged to Imperial Japan. Once it was caught in the searchlights, the aircraft's silhouette was not of a regular fighter aircraft, but rather a round sphere. Moreover, there had been no reports of a country possessing such advanced aviation technology, one that enables aircraft to stay at one place for a long period of time. It was indeed an incredible sight. But early that day, at least thousands of citizens witnessed dozens of round UFOs forming camps and attacking the city. One of the witnesses was Katie, a civilian volunteer who received a call from a regional supervisor shortly after the air raid sirens went off. As soon as I picked up the phone, I was suddenly asked if I could see them and if I saw anything. When I looked out the window, I saw several huge flying objects floating in the sky. One of them was floating right above my house. For a moment, I felt like running away out of fear, but I couldn't even move. Surprisingly, the object was just floating in midair. It barely moved. And then I saw a warm-looking vermilion light enveloping the object. Never in my life have I seen such a sight. As the number of witnesses grew exponentially, there was a breathtaking confrontation between the UFO camps and the U.S. Army. 3:07 a.m. Bang! A massive explosion shook the entire city. The 37th Coast Artillery Brigade began firing. Anti-aircraft guns were fired from all over downtown as if they were fireworks. U.S. fighter aircrafts flew close to the UFO before firing as well. The attack was extraordinary, and according to local newspapers, it was as if a volcano erupted above LA. The U.S. Army fired more than 1,800 anti-aircraft guns in the span of an hour. Even a ghost would not be able to avoid them. I clearly witnessed shells hitting one of the flying objects several times. However, despite being bombarded, the UFOs did not show any response. It was as if they were merely watching the U.S. Army's reactions. The bombardment lasted for an hour, but none of the flying objects were shot down. The U.S. Army sensed that something was indeed strange about the situation. The fact that they were unable to destroy the flying objects with their weapons caused them to be an overwhelming sense of fear. Around 4 a.m., the UFOs disappeared all of a sudden, just like how they appeared. 4:14 a.m., the deafening roar of anti-aircraft guns completely stopped. Although periodic explosions were heard until dawn, it was later revealed that they had been accidentally fired due to the extreme tension. As for the UFOs, they did not reappear. Citizens waited in the dark for the government's guidance. They could finally breathe a sigh of relief when an all clear sounded at 7:21 a.m. February 25th, the morning after the nightmarish dawn. Morning newspapers reported the UFO invasion of the U.S. continent based on witness sightings. However, information such as the enemy's identity, the damage scale, as well as the number of casualties were not accumulated, due to the newspapers being printed hours after the air raid. One thing was certain, the UFOs emerging above downtown at dawn did not belong to Imperial Japan. At an official press conference held hours later, the Secretary of the Navy, Frank Knox, announced the results of a somewhat unintelligible investigation. According to our military investigation results, the Army mistakenly thought meteorological balloons placed in the coastal area were enemy fighter aircraft, which led to the Dawn incident. The majority of military officers and citizens seem to have developed war neuroses due to extreme stress. It has been confirmed that the collateral damage is insignificant. The U.S. government announced that the flying objects emerging above Los Angeles, as well as the subsequent anti-aircraft firing, occurred due to misunderstandings and illusions. Of course, citizens' suspicions and complaints grew over the government's dismissive attitude. These angry citizens included a large number of Army directly involved in the incident, Coast Guards, police, and firefighters. Having documented testimonies of witnesses including himself, Long Beach Police Chief McClellan directly refuted the government's announcement. Is the government deceiving us and treating us like fools? The emergence of the flying objects is an undeniable fact. We have witnessed everything from their emergence to their retreat. As demands to find out the truth increased, the U.S. government held another press conference the next day on February 26th. Secretary of War Henry Stimson and Army General George Marshall made a correction by saying, "It is true that flying objects emerged above downtown, but unfortunately we do not know what they are." In the end, it seems that even the U.S. government had no choice but to officially acknowledge the emergence of UFOs. However, that was all they could acknowledge. Since then, things related to the incident have been thoroughly covered up. There was no additional information aside from the 5 civilians died due to car accidents and heart attack, as an indirect result of the anti-aircraft fire, post-mortem announcement released by the government. The LA air raid, recorded as the world's first battle between humans and UFOs, was slowly forgotten, leaving countless questions behind. But this was not the end. 34 years later, an almost identical incident occurred in Seoul, South Korea. It was the Blue House UFO anti-aircraft gunfire incident, recorded as the best example of UFO emergence. The lights coming from the anti-aircraft guns were directed to the white stars in the sky. As I kept looking at it, I realized that those were not stars, but 12 UFOs moving towards the Blue House, with a certain gap in between them. October 14, 1976, 6:10 p.m., 12 UFOs emerged above Seoul. Despite having carried out anti-aircraft firing throughout downtown Seoul, the UFO movements could not be stopped. 1 citizen died and 31 were injured in the process, due to the wreckage of shells fired by the military. The UFOs floated in midair for around 2 hours without any counterattacks before finally disappearing. Shortly after the incident, the South Korean government announced that the unidentified aircraft was actually a lost American cargo aircraft. Witnesses and experts, however, agreed on one thing: there is no way those were American cargo aircraft. The UFO incidents in both countries are too similar to be considered a coincidence. What is the reason behind the same mystery appearing in the sky across decades? Those who do not believe in UFOs would often deny the existence of UFOs, and that is because they have never been revealed to the public before. Perhaps it is not that it has never been revealed, but rather thoroughly hidden. This has been Strange Night.